Hi there, I'm your English coach, Christina, and welcome to Speak English with Christina, where you'll learn about American culture and business know-how to become confident in English. Listening comprehension is one of the 4 critical skills to learn English, and in this episode, I've decided to share a few of my favorite podcasts with you so that you can practice your listening skills. I encourage you to listen to these podcasts or other podcasts in English that discuss subjects that interest you, so you have more opportunities to listen and understand the pacing of how native speakers talk. Also, as you listen, you'll gain experience in how to follow a story in spoken English. It's like how when you were little and your parents or grandparents read you a story so you could learn your native language. You can get the same effect with podcasts, only no one is telling you to go to bed afterwards. So this list includes my favorite podcasts, the ones that have made a big influence on me personally and professionally. Let's go. Now, the podcasts in this list are not necessarily Learn to Speak English podcasts. They're podcasts spoken by native English speakers and designed for an English-speaking audience on a variety of subjects. And it's a great tool for you to learn how fluent speakers naturally talk to each other. And if you're interested in gaining fluency faster and being able to have natural conversations in English, maybe even to start your own English-speaking podcast, then join my Faster Fluency Conversation Club. The club meets 3 times per week. The group is always small, so you have plenty of opportunities to practice your speaking skills. And each session is guided by one of my fantastic English coaches who will guide you on vocabulary, correct your mistakes, and much more so that you can gain fluency faster. Our first podcast, Mental Strength Conversations, is hosted by Rachel Lilly. She won 3 gold medals in field hockey, and each week Rachel interviews a female athlete and explores how their mental strength takes them from average performance to their best performance. And many of the athletes that she talks to have regular full-time jobs. And in each episode, Rachel's guest shares tips on how to stay motivated to train. And Rachel is also a high-performance coach and is interested in how an athlete's mindset can improve their skills and habit. I decided to share this podcast because sometimes when learning a language, there are mental struggles to overcome. Learning a language, it's a lot like various athletic pursuits. You know, how do you stay motivated when you don't want to study? How do you change your mindset or your pattern of thinking to get the behavior that you want? These are the main themes in the conversations that Rachel has with her guests. And after listening to the conversations, I always come away feeling inspired and motivated to do my best. Now, like most of the podcasts on this list, this is an interview-style podcast. So you get to hear 2 people having a conversation and have a better idea of how native speakers talk to each other. Now, you may notice that Rachel and we don't sound the same. Rachel's a Kiwi. No, not that kind of Kiwi. Actually, this kind of Kiwi. Rachel has a New Zealand English accent, and I have an American English accent. So listening to this podcast will be good practice for you to hear English spoken in a different accent than you may be used to. Of course, Rachel and I both speak English, but we sound a little different. You may recognize Tim Ferriss from his 4-hour book series, where he focuses on what he calls the optimal minimal strategy, where you get the best results by putting in the least possible effort. And each week, Tim Ferriss interviews someone who is at the top of their field. He asks questions such as their habits to stay motivated and what tips they have to achieve success. And the topics of discussion change each week, but they're always fascinating. The topics range from health to business to investing to relationships and science. Tim Ferriss has written The 4-Hour Work Week, The 4-Hour Body, and The 4-Hour Chef, and many other books. Now, he hasn't written a 4-hour language course book yet, but that's okay because Tim Ferriss has a particularly excellent podcast episode that I highly recommend to my students, and it's called The Art and Science of Learning Anything Faster. So check out this episode, and maybe it'll help you to make faster progress in your language studies. This podcast is about some of the most captivating women in business. Each episode is about an hour long, and it features prominent women who have overcome challenges to go on and lead extraordinary lives and make a big impact in the business world. Unlike the first two podcasts in this list, the format of this podcast is more like a story or a biography. The podcast host describes the life events of the subject, such as Julia Child, Martha Stewart, Estee Lauder. But best of all, the podcast highlights tips from their achievements that you can use in your own business or your life. So as a female entrepreneur, I find these stories and these tips inspiring. Before I introduce the podcast backstory, here's my short backstory. I was a history major at university. I studied American history and civilization, and I loved learning about why Americans do the things the way they do. So are you interested in American history and culture too? If so, check out Backstory. This podcast explores how American history has shaped modern-day American culture, and in particular, the history behind the modern news stories. Each episode, it's a fabulous journey into the American mind through history and current events. Now, Backstory is hosted by several American historians who do a terrific job of weaving interviews and history into a fascinating storyline. Listening to podcasts is a great way to strengthen your English comprehension skills. You can improve another critical skill to learning English, writing. If you liked a podcast, write a summary of what you heard, and feel free to post your written summaries in the comments to share with others. Are there any podcasts in English that motivate you to stretch yourself further, either in your language studies or in your life? Share those as well down in the comments. And if you're inspired to have conversations in English and elevate your English language skills, check out my Faster Fluency Conversation Club for live speaking practice with other motivated members of the Speak English with Christina community, coached by our Fluency Club leaders, Kara and Trisha. You can get all of the details and join the Fluency Club by clicking on the link below. You'll also get extra resources and a conversation guidebook to help you increase your vocabulary and become more confident in conversations. Thank you for learning with Speak English with Christina, and I'll see you next time.